21 million Yemeni need humanitarian assistance by the new year 2023. Houthi militia forces civilians to set up camps on the front lines in Adala province. Yemeni children continue to bear the brunt of the war nationwide. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fouad. 8 years of conflict in Yemen have exposed Yemenis to hunger, death and displacement. According to the UN, nearly 21 million Yemeni will need humanitarian assistance by next year, 2023. This report has more details.
It's almost New Year's, and this is how Yemenis are living, facing one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. 80% of Yemenis are not able to have food, safe drinking water, or even get proper medical treatment. Also, 90% of the population has nearly no access to supplied electricity. The public services and infrastructure in Yemen have been completely destroyed due to the conflict, and this resulted in deteriorating the economic situation in Yemen. This has made the poor families exposed to many vulnerabilities, including displacement, disruption of public services, and hunger. The humanitarian needs in Yemen are increasing day after day. Children in Yemen are suffering from acute malnutrition. Women and girls have a very hard time accessing healthcare services. In addition, more than 20.1 million people out of 30.5 million struggle to have access to health services. This is all happening due to the conflict in Yemen, which makes it very hard for people to reach healthcare centers. Millions of people in Yemen rely on humanitarian aid for survival. Yet the fighting in Yemen makes it completely difficult for humanitarian organizations to reach the most vulnerable people. WFP has cut the food rations for 8 million people at the beginning of the year. Due to these cuts, households are only receiving about half of the WFP's minimum basic daily food basket. The UN describes the situation in Yemen as a man-made famine. This will make Yemenis unable to afford basic necessities such as food and fuel. The current level of hunger in Yemen is unprecedented and is causing severe hardship for millions of people. 16.2 million Yemenis are food insecure, and over 5 million people in Yemen are on the brink of famine, as the conflict and economic decline have left families struggling to find enough food to get through the day. It's expected that 21.6 million people will require humanitarian assistance and protection services in 2023, a slight decrease from 23.4 million people in need in 2022. If humanitarian organizations do not require all the needed services for the people in Yemen, and if the conflict does not come to an end, well, the results are quite clear. People will surely die.
In a new bloody step, the Houthi militia forced the civilians in Adala province to set up camps near the front lines. Such a move aims to use civilians as human shelter, a typical behavior used by the rebels since they started the war in 2014. The Fang report has more on this.
Coinciding with the recent military escalation carried out by the Houthi militia on Muray's front north of Adala, and in a dangerous precedent and the new investment in the blood of the innocent, the militias forced the civilian population to set up tents in the areas of the contact line in the areas of Azayla and Yais, located between Muray's area and the Damt district. According to military sources, the Houthi militia condemned that it forced the citizens to set up those tents under the pretext of providing safe passages for the citizens, despite the Houthi elements continuing to block the main road of Muray's, Damt and Sana'a, and disavowing them from repairing the main bridges that had been blown up previously. Not to mention continuing to plant minefields and explosive devices in those roads, which prevented citizens from traveling across this way for several years.
Our forces in Muray's front have monitored camps for displaced people that were set by the Houthi militia, claiming they are to protect civilians. But their purpose is absolutely military. We warn citizens not to be in those camps.
There are tents whose outward appearance seems merciful, but they hide death behind them and warns of a humanitarian catastrophe. If the laws prevent the gathering of civilians in cities in emergency cases, What do you think of the actions of the Houthi elements, where they gathered people in the middle of the lines of contact and fire in the areas north of Dala, adjacent to Damt district, and warnings of an expected trap that will leave more victims with the weapons of the Houthi militia?
Setting up camp for citizens in a military contact area is considered inhumane and concealment trap. Therefore, we warn citizens not to be in this area because they will be targeted by the military forces. We appeal to international organizations and human rights organizations to intervene to prevent these criminal acts of the rebel militia.
An inhumane action happened in the contact lines of this war zone, especially between the area of Murais and Damt and the sites of Azayla and Yais, where the Houthi militia has set up tents in those military areas amid warnings and condemnations of the use of civilians as human shields in those military areas.
The number of Houthi fighters who have fallen in confrontations with government forces has risen to 130 since the end of the UN truce in early October. The militia announced that during funeral procession of their fighters in the capital Sana'a, reports confirmed that the rebels have been incurred great losses in recent months. International Migration said that more than 200,000 African migrants in Yemen live in dire humanitarian situation. IOM's chief of mission in Yemen warned that the situation in Yemen is getting worse for migrants, especially women who live in difficult circumstances. The statement indicated that Yemen, despite the humanitarian catastrophe, still represents a destination for migrants from the Horn of Africa. The Iranian-backed terrorist Houthi militia has prevented faculty members at Sana'a University from working in private universities despite refusing to pay their salaries for several years. The militia issued a circular to all deans of faculties to prevent university faculty members from working in private universities. Earlier this month, the militia had issued an executive circulation banning public university professors from working in private universities, as well as limiting academics working abroad from cutting their salaries.
أبي مات بشارع 40 دحين أنا أشقى على أسرتي مع باقي اللي أنا أصرف عليهم كل شيء. أنا اسمي أنس غصيب سيف، عمري 12 سنة. أنا أشتغل بورشة حديد من الساعة 7 للساعة 6. أحيانا أسرع، أحيانا أقص، أحيانا أرنق، أحيانا أنقش، أي حاجة أنا أعمل. لا الساعة لما تبدأ الساعة 6 أوقف. أنا وقفت الدراسة علشان ما فيش أحد يشقى على أسرتي، أدرس أخواني الباقي منهم 4 وأنا الخامس. أحلم إن أفتح ورشة أبي وأشقى على أسرتي وأندي لهم مصاري وأدرس أخوتي الآخر الجامعات وأطبخ وأي شيء.
The brutality of the war in Yemen has ruined the lives of all groups in society, especially children. According to the UN, the military conflict claimed the lives of thousands of children during the period 2015 until September 2022. This report has more.
The brutality of the war in Yemen has ruined the lives of all groups in society, especially children. From 2015 to September 2022, the military conflict claimed the life of more than 3,000 children and injured more than 7,000 more, according to a recent statement by UNICEF. UNICEF noted that this was the official figure the organization was able to verify, but that the true number is likely to be far greater, with countless cases of child death and injuries going unseen and unreported. For nearly 8 years, children have paid a high price in Yemen's war, and the tragedy looks set to continue. This is due to 3 factors: the attitudes of warring parties, the stalled peace process, and the unexploded devices in conflict-stricken territories. 8 years of conflict have done little to soften the stance of the country's warring sides. Child victims of the war, part of the wider suffering of Yemenis, are not enough to dissuade them from pursuing their political goals with violence. The Houthi group, which controlled the capital Sana'a and almost all Yemen northern provinces, has responded by accusing the United Nations of simply talking about the victims of war without taking the necessary and practical steps to address the humanitarian tragedy. Only a sustained peace will allow families to rebuild their shattered lives and begin to plan for the future, said UNICEF Executive Director Catherine Russell. Although the United Nations and the United States have been leading extensive diplomatic efforts to bring an end to the civil war between the Iran-backed Houthi group and the Yemeni government, a significant breakthrough remains out of reach.
Shabuan tribes in Marib Governorate approved document through which it criminalizes various acts of vandalism and disruptions carried out by outlaws. The tribes criminalized any person from the region who made acts of vandalism, terrorism, or sheltering thieves. Coming next. Med Global Organization provides Hais Rural Hospital in Hodeidah with equipment and logistics.
نشن ندي ماء من الغيل والغيل هذا بعيد، كنا ندي بالدواب نعبي ماء وتشجعنا. كنا ننزل الساعة 5 رجعنا الساعة 9.
ما يجي لنا ظهر لأنه زحمة ما حد لي يخلي الجهل يغرق وإحنا تعبنا زيادة.
وكنت أحس صدري يوجعني وعز قدرك ركبي يوجعيني.
كنا بنستخدم حتى نغسل أولادنا يعني بأيام معدودة.
كنت أغيب على المدرسة لأن كنت أروح الديمة.
حتى وإن كان يجي الأمطار تروح هدن لأنه ما في معي خزانة.
الوقت نشتري ب30,000 هي مع هستيلك ما يغلقش معها الشهر.
بس راح تطلب الله ولا أي حاجة، عاملة كل شغلك الماء.
Welcome back. Med Global Organization has supplied Hais Rural Hospital with special medical devices and equipment to open the operations department. The following report has more on this.
In southern Hodeidah, Med Global Yemen provided Hais Rural Hospital with medical devices and equipment for the operations department in order to open and activate it, in addition to providing it with incubators for children.
We received devices and equipment today, which consist of drug materials, lighting and beds of operations, incubators and other surgical tools. Female doctors will be available to conduct cesarean operations and other surgeries for women. This hospital will serve people in Hais and other near directorates.
The opening of the operations department at Hayes Hospital represents a qualitative leap for the health sector and an improvement of healthcare services for hundreds of patients, so that it's the first time operations department to be opened in one of the liberated districts of Al Hudaydah Governorate to conduct surgical and cesarean operations.
We used to transfer patients from Hayes to other areas which have hospitals provided with operations rooms. Now we have established operations rooms, ICUs, and incubators. This has facilitated the process rather than transferring patients, which results in their death on the road.
Med Global team has attended today to provide the hospital with medical devices, which amounts to $70,000. The organization strives to support hospitals and to provide them with equipment to guarantee sustainability.
The project began with the restoration of the hospital and ended with the delivery of devices and equipment, starting with the operation room, supplying it with fuel, in addition to incentives, and conducting the necessary training for technicians and medical staff with the support of Med Global Yemen.
The World Health Organization has raised concerns regarding the presence of a contaminated medicine in Yemen. The organization said in a statement that the contaminated batch was found in Yemen and Lebanon after harmful effects appeared on sick children taking the medicine. The organization stressed the need to detect contaminated products and withdraw them from circulation to prevent harm to patients. The National Program for Combating Tuberculosis said 7,602 cases have been recorded across the country. Healthy Militia said that tuberculosis cases in Yemen are expected to reach 9,800 cases after adding causes in the fourth quarter of the same year, an increase of 5% compared to last year's statistics. The Yemeni Ministry of Interior announced that the quantity of drugs have been found on one of the coasts of Al Mahra Governorate, eastern Yemen. The Security Media Center of the Ministry of Interior said that the Anti-Narcotics Department found a quantity of drug substances on the coast of Damascus. The Yemenis are entering a new year, leaving behind the worst man-made humanitarian crisis in the world, in the terms of the United Nations. The country has undergone major military, political, and humanitarian developments. Nearly 21 million Yemeni need humanitarian assistance by the year 2023. Houthi militia forces civilians to set up camps on the front lines in Adala province. Yemeni children continue to bear the brunt of the war nationwide. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouet. Thank you for watching.